There's a story that in 1936, in the Black Forest, there was a crash of a UFO. The crashed UFO was taken to Wurzburg Castle, one of the key Third Reich headquarters, and that's where the process of reverse engineering began.
According to some accounts, the Nazi scientists were able to obtain the craft, reverse engineer the technology, and eventually develop rockets, advanced guidance systems, bombers, flying wings, and technology that the world has never seen.
If this incredible story is true, then Hitler's armies may have had an extraterrestrial edge in their battle for world domination. The first clues appeared after the Allied invasion. June 13th, 1944, 1 week after the D-Day landings. In the coastal region of Normandy, France, American and British troops are fighting to free Western Europe from the grip of Hitler's Third Reich. The Nazis retaliate by launching an incredible new weapon, V-1 rockets called buzz bombs, aimed for England.
On D-Day, the Allies landed somewhat unexpectedly and more successfully than the Germans had anticipated, and the launching of the V-1 was to get revenge on them for this invasion and try to undermine British morale.
The V-rockets were Germany's first Wunderwaffen, wonder weapons of World War II, and could have been game changers. They were the first, essentially, guided missiles of modern warfare.
Effectively, the V-1 just flew, a lot of the time, over London. And then when the fuel ran out, the thing would plummet to the earth and explode. And I remember my grandparents, who lived in London, telling me about this. You were all right as long as you heard the engine, but the moment the engine stopped, there was terror, and people just dived for cover.
3 months later, in German-occupied Holland, the Nazis unleash an even more powerful weapon.
The V-2 was effectively a long-range ballistic missile. It was a rocket. It traveled to the very fringe of space. There was no warning, no possible defense against it.
Nor any logical explanation for the Germans developing such advanced weaponry, seemingly out of thin air. American engineer Robert Goddard fired a liquid-fueled A-8 to an altitude of 9,000 feet, a record-setting achievement. But as cutting-edge as it was, Goddard's rocket could only travel up and down, primitive in contrast to the V-1 and V-2, which soared over long distances, their routes programmed into an onboard computer. This new navigation system is a quantum leap forward in rocket technology.
These weapons nearly changed not just the course of the war, but arguably the course of human history. And the science, the technology, came that close to winning the war for the Germans.
So, was it sheer coincidence that German aerospace engineering took off in the years after the UFO crash in the Black Forest? UFO researchers say no, and point squarely at another Nazi innovation, the flying wing.
The Nazis had something called the Horton HO-229, which was a flying wing design.
This plane was totally revolutionary and far beyond anything that the Americans could have even conceived of at the time. It had no tail, it was literally just a flying wing that was essentially the predecessor to the American B-2 bomber. The fact that the Nazis even had the idea for it, it's amazing.
And this is a delta-shaped craft, and again, this design was like nothing that had been seen before in the aviation community. And if you look at the shape of this aircraft, it really does remind you, for all the world, of a B-2 stealth bomber.
It's hard to believe that half a century before the U.S. military deployed this American icon, the Nazis were developing the same stealth technology, a flying wing, in an era before calculators were even invented. Convincing evidence of possible extraterrestrial influence behind Hitler's reign of terror.
That might explain how, seemingly from nowhere, the Nazis suddenly acquired technology that, frankly, was a generation or two ahead of itself, all within a matter of years, and all, if the stories are to be believed, very shortly after this UFO crash in the Black Forest.
And the longer the war went on, the more curious German spacecraft. From flying missiles to flying saucers. Coming up.
The Nazis couldn't win the war conventionally anymore, so they needed miracle weapons.
These craft were shaped like the classic shaped disc UFOs.
Ghost Nation, Wednesday at 9 on Travel Channel.